Alright. Is this thing on? I think it is. Yep. And yep. Hello. Probably absolutely nobody. But to the solitary person that may see this later, my name doesn't matter. I'm just a random asshole who's going to go over chapter 24 of the random ass world history textbook, otherwise known as the Ottomans, the Chinese, and the Russians go fuck themselves. Very slowly, over time, with basically every single fucking problem ever. So, we're gonna start off with the Ottoman Empire. Right? Ottoman. The Ottomans. Okay? So, basically, major problems are number one, the sultans, who are shit. Number two, nationalism, in which all of the kind of regions in the empire are collectively going to the Ottomans and saying, go fuck yourself. Alright, another fucking problem were the Janissaries, who were absolutely shit. Right? These were, the Christian boys stolen from their families, raised in Islam to go fight against whatever asshole the Ottomans pissed off. Right? These are some of the main problems, including just economic decline and failure to reform according to whatever the Europeans were doing, because the Europeans were doing so much fucking better, right? So, the first problem for the motherfucking Ottomans is, let's see, one of the first problems for the motherfucking Ottomans is when Napoleon kind of went down and attacked Egypt, right? And so, that was kind of fucking stupid. He failed miserably, and then his generals that he left behind, like assholes, were just kind of sitting there in Egypt, and they had no idea what the fuck they were going to do. So instead, so after the French generals, after the French generals kind of went like, how about no, fuck this shit, I'm out. Right? And after they kind of left, a guy named Muhammad Ali kind of stepped in and went like, alright, motherfuckers, it's time that we became like Europe. So obviously this is going to fail miserably. Here, let's see. Here is his tasty mug. Right? So obviously this is going to fail miserably, right? This guy named Muhammad Ali. He tries to bring European reforms to Egypt, right? So he builds shit like factories and he makes some kind of special training schools for the military, right? So that he could make Egypt a little bit more like Europe. Because Europe, at this point in time, was doing a ton better than basically everybody else, excepting America, which is following their Europeans and kind of doing just as good, if not better, because America, fuck yeah, right? So Muhammad Ali tried to industrialize Egypt, and he failed slightly miserably. Although, he did, improve Egypt a little bit. And this was proved when he kind of took his army to fight with the Ottomans against Syria and some other assholes. Who the fuck cares or knows? And they kind of kicked ass a lot better than the assholes from Istanbul. Okay? So a random ass sultan, we're gonna call him asshole number one. Okay, sultan asshole number one. Sultan asshole number one. He was looking at the shit in Europe, and he was like, "Damn, son, we're gonna have to reform our empire, and do some shit and make ourselves a better place. Okay, we gotta make ourselves like them. They're so cool. They're so much better than us." And we're just kind of fucking bitches who can't control anybody or do anything, or basically they were like a depressive teenager just going like, life is miserable, it's meaningless, I can't fucking do anything. And so he tried to reform, but they failed for a couple of reasons, including the Janissaries, right? The assholes from earlier, the Christian boys who were stolen, converted to Islam. They had a lot of political power, and they basically went like, no. Okay? And so the Ottomans had to try to subdue those assholes. They kind of failed. And then, after a while, there's a huge military coup, and asshole number one is executed in a massive military uprising. Okay. Next guy, asshole number two, Sultan. We're gonna call him asshat. Asshat number one. Okay. Now then, asshat number one was an asshat that kept on trying to impose these reforms on the Ottoman Empire, and he also pretty much fucking failed. And he tried to do something that was fucking unheard of. He made the Tanzimat reforms. Okay, these were reforms of him trying to say, "Hey, everybody, let's be like Europe," and everybody else went like, "Fuck you, asshole! Why the fuck do we want to be European?" And so asshat number one was a sad motherfucker. Okay. So, and this was also, asshat number one was also the guy that lost Greece to, the Greece revolutionary forces, and he tried to do the Tanzimat reforms, which were basically just random European shit, like a code of law, and like equal rights, and just some other technologies like universities and some other shit from Europe. And everybody just kind of looked at that and went like, that's fucking stupid. So it kind of failed a little bit, just a teeny tiny bit. Tried. And he also tried to do some military reforms by sending some of his military guys. I don't know why that's a military guy. He sent some military guys to places like France and he sent some military guys to places like France and Germany, so that they could actually learn the art of war, as dictated by some European assholes. Okay? And he also made the first medical school in the Ottoman Empire, because it was decided by asshat number one that less people should die, and that we might actually need to teach people how to heal others, you know? Just some kind of common sense shit that you kind of maybe could have thought up earlier in the whole hundreds of years while the Europeans were kind of having it for a very, very long while, and, you know, Ottomans are fucking stupid, and for some reason, there's a paragraph on the introduction of the Fez, and I don't why the fuck is there a thing on the Fez? Why is this important to world history? I don't know. Apparently, it's for military reasons. I think that's fucking stupid, right? And so, you know, there's the legal reforms, and status of women went increasingly downward because obviously there aren't a bunch of hard-raging liberals on Twitter and that will fight for women's rights all the time. And it wasn't really a thing that existed in this time period. And so they actually had some rights by being able to control some land from their inheritances, and then they kind of couldn't anymore. Sucks for those assholes. Anyway, so now we're going to talk about the Crimean War. Now, the Crimean War Crimea itself might sound familiar, because it was the place that Russia took from Ukraine, right? Well, that doesn't fucking matter. This is the past. Okay? This is the farther past, bitch. So, basically, let's see. What actually fucking happened? I like skimmed this really quickly, and I'm not sure what exactly happened. But I'm pretty sure what happened was that Russians over here, the Russians took a look at Crimea and went like, you know what, I'm gonna take that shit. So they went over and they attacked the Ottomans. Right? They attacked the Ottomans. It's really terrible handwriting, I'm sorry. And then France and Britain show up. I don't know why they're these colors, but they show up to defend the Ottomans from the Russians. And throughout the entire war, it's extremely obvious that these two assholes, the Russians and the Ottomans, were obsolete and the worst fucking military. Right? This was almost as bad as if you took a guy from the future with a laser gun and you set him into a fight against a knight with a sword. Now, when was the last time you ever thought, hey, I should attack that guy with a sniper over there, 50 feet away, with a sword? It sounds very fucking stupid, doesn't it? Well, that's basically what they did. So, they had the British, and the French had guns and shit by now, right? And then the Ottomans and the Russians had very terrible guns. And they still had, like, daggers and shit. Kind of. Don't quote me on that. But basically what happened was the Tsar of Russia was fucked over. Britain and France was able to use propaganda and get the public to be like, yeah, what up? Go fight those assholes. And so, you know, not only were they better at fighting, they were better at keeping up morale. And then there's, you know, some kind of famous poet about Charge of the Light Brigade, the Crimean War, and all sorts of wonderful shit. And then the European countries of Britain and France were able to do some shit called extraterritoriality. I'm not spelling that shit out. Which basically meant that they could take a spot. So let's say that this is the Ottoman Empire, right? It's a very tiny empire, as it should be, right? And so the Europeans can come in and be like, you know, this spot is now for European trade, and you can't do shit shit about it. And that's basically what extraterritoriality was. So this entire green section right here is now exempt from all of the Ottoman laws and rules and all that shit. It's basically a mini France, or a mini Britain, or just a mini non-Ottoman place. Okay? And Egypt, if you might remember from any lecture whatsoever, or from knowing a little bit about world history, was very, very dependent on cotton. And it's the 18 was about the 1870s, the 1880s, and right about this time, there's some assholes who live across the Pacific Ocean, right? And they happen to make a lot of cotton. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it might be somebody Oh yeah, it's the US fucking A, right? It's the South. Yeah! You had to give me a moment! And so, the US fucking A, obviously, is producing a shit ton of cotton, because, yeah, slaves were freed, but they're still kind of working on plantations making cotton. And so, since there's an influx of cotton from, Georgia, what up? Georgia, South Carolina, all the southern states, and they having a jolly old time producing cotton to their heart's content from slave and non-slave labor over time. Egypt was kind of getting fucked over by the US of fucking A. Okay? So, all in all, there's this paragraph on foreign debt, and I'm not even going to read it. I'm going to assume that the Ottomans were in a shit ton of debt. Okay, let's move on from one asshole who fell into a decline to another asshole who fell into a decline. And that's going to be Mother Russia, the Russian Empire. Woo! So, basically, what happened was they fucked themselves up the ass. Very hard. Now then, into the basics. Russia was slow as fuck in adopting any sort of technological reforms or any economic reforms or really even just freeing the serfs, which, again, let me remind you, made up 99% of the Russian population at this time period. That might be a problem, right? Because at this point, even America and Britain and the European states had gotten rid of slavery, and Russia was kind of looking like an asshole because they decided, hey, I'm gonna keep 99% of the population and make them my fucking bitch. Okay? So, didn't like it so much. Nobody liked them too much. Well, they kind of did. They were like, okay, you're kind of cool, but then they also kind of really hated them. So Tsar Nicholas the First, which was I think wait. Tsar Nicholas the First. I'm really fucking bad at this. Alright, well, he was a random asshole who tried to create some industrial shit, and it kind of failed. This is... What the fuck is this book? What the fuck? Okay, long story short, Russian military is absolute shit. Just like the Ottomans, whose military was absolute shit. Now then, Russia may have been a little bit closer to Europe than like the Ottomans or the Chinese, because they actually tried to interact with them. Cough, cough, Peter the Great, cough, cough. Right? And so they were kind of almost looking like them, and they actually weren't. So some very popular people were like the Slavophiles. Slavophiles. Now, I don't know why it looks like Slavophiles and it looks like something dirty, but Slavophiles were people who said, we gotta go back to the real Russia, when we had the Orthodox Church, there was peasant life, the Tsar had absolute power over everyone, and everybody except for 1% was a serf. That's clearly the best way that Russia should be. They were basically the equivalent to the conservatives over on the European side, saying clearly the Catholic faith is the best, and kings should rule, and we should all be judged unworthy. Okay? Now then, is anybody actually watching this? Somebody's watching this. Interesting. That's weird. I didn't think anybody was gonna watch this shit while I was streaming that. Anyway, so when the Russians got their asses handed to them in Crimea, this gave rise to a thing called Pan-Slavism. Now then, this is not, as you may think, as a teenager living in the 21st century, another gender. This actually is how people started, like, that 1% and maybe some of the 99%, like a little bit, went like, you know what, we have to unite all of the Slavs under Russian rule. And got it, made Russia a little bit fucking insane. Okay. And so they tried to expand and shit. Like expanding to, this isn't really important. Basically, they just expanded to the south. All the way up to the borders of the frontiers of China and shit. And they took over shit like Georgia, not our Georgia. Azerbaijan, not our Azerbaijan. And Armenia, not our Armenia. That's a joke. That's very terrible. So, and they basically got all their way up to the Qing of China, who we're going to cover later. They're actually in, oh, what the hell? That's not how you spell Qing. To the Qing of China. These guys are even more shit right now. But we will get to them later. In about, like, I don't know, a minute or so. So basically, what this meant was that Russia was getting pretty big without still doing anything, and they got kind of close to India, right? That's totally India, not like the doughboy from World War I. Anyway, so they got closer to India, right? The British Isles, that's the British Isles. It kind of went like, oh no, Russia's getting near us, and India's like our only source of income, or not, is one of our biggest sources of income since we're a tiny ass island nation in the middle of the freezing Atlantic Ocean. Oh shit, what are we gonna do? Well, the thing is, they had a much better military, so they went to buffer zones in Afghanistan and Iran, and they basically went like, no. Let's see. And that's it. On expansion. And, last thing about Mother Russia, there's that thing called the Decembrist Revolt. I don't know why it's so late in the chapter. This really should have been little bit more prioritized. Just maybe. And, I wonder. Oh. Hey, Matt. Huh. Anyway, so, well. Basically, this last part is about the Decembrist revolts when the military revolts when the military tried to give the middle finger. That's a very terrible middle finger. They tried to give the middle finger to Tsar Alexander I, and he killed them all. End of story. And then there also happened to be like Masonic lodges and student clubs that were increasing. That meant that an increasing amount of people were starting to go like, maybe we should rebel against the government. No. But yeah, like the Freemasons, like, oh, the Illuminati. No, not really. And that's basically Russia for now. They got into deep shit. Not as deep shit as Ottomans, and definitely not as deep as shit as the Ching, which we're gonna talk about. Oh boy! Time to talk about the Ching Empire. Right? So, the Ching Empire, right? It got into, well, I still can't spell it right. The Qing Empire got into a whole, they're in a whole lot of shit by the end of this. They're in a whole lot of shit. Okay? Now then, you might think, how can they be in such shit? They're the Chinese. Well, a lot of problems here. First one, Canton system. Now then, the Canton system basically meant all traders got to go to Canton and nowhere else, because they only got to go to Canton because screw foreigners. Okay? And so this was already pissing off the Europeans, and if you'll remember from earlier, there's this McCartney mission that failed, and more Europeans went like, screw the Chinese. Okay? And even then, most of the problems before like the Opium Wars was with people inside of China making trouble, because everybody hates the government, and it's really, really shit. So there's some people called the White Lotus Rebellion. Now the White Lotus Rebellion took a bunch of people, and they said, you know what, we're gonna predict the Ming Dynasty will return, and the Buddha will return to us, even though Buddhism's an Indian religion, and we're gonna be saved. And they rebelled, and they failed miserably. They failed, but the government was also kind of crabby. So, all in all, it was failures everywhere. And so they got suppressed, but the techniques of the southern populations were gonna prove useful whenever they were invaded by the British, who invades everybody. Ha! They're greedy ass motherfuckers. All right, so Opium Wars. Gotta get that green out there. Opium Wars. Okay. So the Opium Wars were when India is exporting opium to China illegally, right? And everybody is getting addicted on opium. They're super addicted to opium, right? And so the Chinese government's like, do we just make it legal, or do we suppress it and just enforce the ban? And in the end, they decided, no, we can't have everybody high all the time. And so they declared war against Britain. So now this time, and I'm not lying to you this time, the Chinese had like swords and really, really crappy guns that blew up when they were used half the time, against the British, which had cannons and, working guns. Because, this was the modern times, and they had working artillery. So, as you might imagine, the Opium Wars went really, really shittily for the Chinese. And there's a whole paragraph dedicated to British gunboats. But we all know that the sun never sets on the British Empire because they got the best navy in the world until now in the present day, right? These motherfuckers had the best gunboats. And so, when they were approaching Nanjing, the Qing went like, well, maybe this was a really big fucking mistake. And they negotiated. And what this led to was the creation of a number of treaty ports, which went up from Canton to some other fucking cities. I'm not writing that out. I'm not Chinese. What do you think I am? Your goddamn history teacher? Gee, why the fuck would you think I was that? And so they also made these European zones, which were like those extraterritorialities from earlier in the Ottoman Empire, which is pretty cool. Which basically meant Europe. So let's say this be China, high on opium, and these places that are filled in green, not accurate, but these places are all European, okay? They are European zones. And that's basically a place where all the Europeans can come, hang out, do whatever they want. And on top of all this, Britain got most favored nation status, which meant that they were the best to the Chinese, and whatever benefits they gave to other countries, they had to give to the British. So, a thing that popped up whenever this happened, was the Taiping Rebellion. Okay, we're not talking about drugs anymore. So, this is the Taiping Rebellion, right? Now, the Taiping Rebellion was a bunch of motherfuckers who thought this guy named Hong Zihuan, I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not going to read the pronunciation guide. Said that he was the brother of Jesus. Now then, you and I can clearly look at this and say that this man is full of shit. But apparently not everybody else, because he got thousands and thousands of followers, enough so that he could take hackers like himself, that was his ethnicity, and he could take them and he could recruit them, and eventually the Taiping Rebellion takes Nanjing, right? Nanjing. You know, that one place that the British took over. And they just made that the capital and said, you know what, Ching Empire, go fuck yourself. And they pulled the middle finger. And, you know, the Ching was kind of just scratching their heads going like, shit, fuck. And so, after a while of this Taiping Rebellion, with the bro of Jesus was just kind of taking over, hanging out, and like the entire south of China was against the entire north of China. Kind of, not really. Don't quote me on that shit. Britain and France, having finally defeated the obsolete Russians in the Crimean War, looked at China and went like, this is worse than the time I left my 5-year-old with a pile of shit and weed. And so, they went like, okay, we've got to do another opium war. And this time, it's called the Arrow Wars. Who knows why they're called the Arrow Wars. Now then, the Arrow Wars were basically the Opium Wars all over again. This time, bro of Jesus, his movement, the Taiping Rebellion, is absolutely wrecked. Okay? That's just it. It is absolutely wrecked. and they try to return it to what it was before. And basically, the rest of this, in the rest of this section, China, all you gotta know is China was completely fucked over. So, finally, we talk about the decentralization of the Qing Empire. I don't really think this is necessary. Remember how I said before the Ottomans were, let's see, they were deep in debt, and they were having problems within the empire of every sort, including economic and social and political. And there was a random ass leader who was trying to change things, but was also really terrible and absolutely shit. And we're done. That's basically what happened. That's basically what it's talking about next. And so, in conclusion, the Russians, the Ottomans, and the Chinese were all collectively fucked in the ass by Europe. By Europeans. Okay. Thanks for watching, whoever was watching. And I'll see you whenever I'll see you again. Bye-bye. Ooh. Shit. Should probably stop the stream now. And